Oh, and here we go. So just scroll through and we'll say it together.
Beautiful.
Okay, so we imagine, here we are. We all see what happened is Buddha taught a lot of his class and a lot of his teachings he gave at this place called Vulture's Peak, which I don't know, some of you might have been there. It's very special. It's near Rajgir and near, anyway, it's a very, and Buddha, many of his teachings, he's a very small spot and it's right up high and it's very hot. And pilgrims always go there. It's very special. And we always recite the Heart Sutra there. So one of his most famous ones, of course, is the Heart Sutra. But the way he commonly gave teachings, and this is one of them, he'd be sitting in meditation, blissing out, and then he'd channel his thoughts into the minds of his disciples who then spoke the teachings. So this is one of those examples. So just scroll through slowly. So we imagine we're here at Rajgir. We imagine this little spot and there's a whole lot of people there, and they're all, and he's sitting, so we'll just recite it together. So thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagawan was dwelling on mass of Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. So he's in meditation, right? So then also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara, but actually looking like in a human form, looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, which is all about emptiness, and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So now, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra, he's one of his main disciples, said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? So he said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara said this to the Venerable Sharadvati Putra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. And so now he starts. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Likewise, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness. And what he's basically here doing, all the headings tell you, is he's really stating these different categories of phenomena according to the Buddhist worldview. You'll see the headings, each one, these different categories of phenomena. This is you'll see the headings. So no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. No visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There's no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there's no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There's no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared: Ta taum gate para samgate bodhi svaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagawan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagawan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara, all those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were delighted, overjoyed, and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagawan. Okay, that'll do. We'll close it now. So what's Buddha talking about? Okay, what's the point here? Well, let's give the big picture. Give the big picture. In basically what Buddha has done through his own experience, coming from that amazing Indians, he went through this incredible process, these genius Indians before him, these yogis and scholars, who were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self, as the Dalai Lama likes to point out to us. You know, it wasn't the Greeks. It was a good 500-800 years before that. The Indians were into it, right? And it certainly wasn't Freud. Modern people probably think it was Freud who began the investigation into the nature of self, like a crummy old 100 years ago. No, 3,000 plus years ago, these genius Indians were on the case, right? So they just, the key to understanding all of this is they're the ones who cultivated this incredibly sophisticated psychological skill, and I call it that purposely. We would call it meditation. It's basically called single pointed concentration. You know, it gives you the ability. They discovered this, they created it, that enables you to completely subdue the grosser level of consciousness, which is all the conceptuality, all the feelings, all the emotions, and all even the sensory. So now there's no such level of mind posited in modern psychology. It's a fact, you know. So these genius Indians were the one who discovered it. And as a result of that, by going deep into their own mind, we're not discussing the brain, we're discussing the actual subjective cognitive process itself. And they literally mapped the mind as a result. So really what Buddhism is this presentation of the universe, how it exists. And you've got, within that universe, you have matter, which, you know, is the four elements. That's how they still talk. And minds, basically it. And so really what Buddhism is, he came out of that system and he diverged in his own direction, particularly in relation to his own experiential findings about the nature of self. In fact, the nature of everything. He discovered, so they talk about the ultimate nature of everything is that it doesn't have an inherent nature. So these words are so abstract to us, emptiness. We sort of lose the plot as soon as we hear it. But basically what this is telling us, and what he has discovered to be true, is that everything in the universe, including the person, the self, and everything else, lacks this concrete, solid existence that we just assume things have. Now, the point is, we don't think we think that, because the mistake is so absolute, is so utter, it's so complete, it's so primordial in the minds of sentient beings. This deep assumption, primordially the deepest assumption in the bones of our being, so subtle that we don't, as I said, we don't even think we think it, is that we have this primordial assumption that everything, including the I, has this solid, concrete, definite, permanent, inherent, unchanging, set in stone kind of nature. And of course, that's when we hear those words, we go, oh yeah, really? Is that what I think? I didn't know that. No one taught me that. And we don't, that's why it's so puzzling to hear that Buddha says that one doesn't exist. That one's empty. All it means is doesn't exist. Empty just means doesn't exist. And so it's not only do we know what emptiness means, we don't even know what he's saying we think exists. We never thought we thought that. So it's really extra confusing, you know, to us. So this is what we have to learn to investigate. And the point about all this isn't just to be clever. He says clinging to and believing in that inherent, independent, solid, definite me and everything else is the root cause of all suffering, of all universes, of all beings since beginningless time. That's Buddha's deal. That's what he's found to be true. And everything, therefore, in Buddhism, all the practices, all the techniques, whatever they are, all the advice, all the teachings, all the techniques, all the meditations, their function has to be to guide us step by baby step to the discovery of that. That's the bottom line, you know. And what happens when you've finally discovered that fantasy I that we think exists doesn't, then this is the beginning of the process of getting the hell out of suffering. You know, that's what he means by nirvana. Nirvana is the cessation of suffering. It's not some hippie trippy place like heaven. It's the state of your mind, you know. So really, Buddha is talking about the mind, about psychology. That's a big surprise to us because we don't think that. We think it's some kind of weird religion, you know. And so the other thing is to remember repeatedly, this is so important, This information does not come from on high. It is not just some opinion that someone made up. It's not coming from a creator. It's not a question of a believing it. It's not a question of, none of that. That does not exist in the Buddhist view. Buddha is this person who, for his own hard work, internal, discovered the truth of this, discovered the reality. So he presents his findings. And he says, over to you. Here's my methodology. You want to become like this, realize emptiness, achieve Buddhahood, have compassion, manifest in countless universes to benefit sentient beings. And here's the methodology, baby. It's up to you. So that's the essence really of what it is. And so let's try and get our head around then this idea of this emptiness, because it's so confusing to us, So the first biggest mistake, and this can be really easy mistake to make, even among the greatest scholars and yogis, because in all the texts of these various teachings showing over the centuries, there are various levels of interpretation of this emptiness. And so there's all these debates and discussions, in the different traditions about what it really is. So it's a huge topic. So, so what is basically so let's just use simple examples, okay? What he's saying is that okay, I'll go further before I do simple examples. So basically what he's saying is this root, they call this, one of the words referring to this neurotic state of mind, this grasping at an inherent me, ego grasping, they call it, ego grasping. It's one of the terms they use is it's a delusion, it's a misconception, it's a faulty state of mind. A faulty state of mind, not in the sense of being naughty, but in the sense of literally causing us to misconceive things. This is quite interesting because we don't think this way. And then on the basis of that, there is attachment to get what that fantasy I wants, which is like this panic-stricken emotional hunger. And then when it doesn't get what it wants, that gives rise to anger or fear, then all the other dramas. So the key function of all the neurotic states of mind, as far as the Buddhist view is concerned, is that they're the source of our suffering. And why? And it sounds so peculiar to us because you don't think like this, is because they're misconceptions deep in the bones of our being. And we've practiced believing in these misconceptions for so many lifetimes that they're just spontaneous. They're totally automatic. We don't even know they're a problem. So basically what that means is, as Lama Zopa puts it, all these neurotic states of mind, the root one, ego grasping, or ignorance, they call it in Tibetan, ma rigpa, unawareness, this primordial ignorance, primordial root ignorance about how things exist. And then it gives rise to attachment to get what that fantasy I wants, and aversion, all the other dramas. They all have this one function of misrepresenting things to us. So I think we sort of know this when it comes to attachment. As Lama Zopa says, these neurotic states of mind, he doesn't use that term, but I think Buddha would have liked it. These neurotic states of mind, these fear-based, neurotic, unhappy, emotional states of mind. What they do is they decorate on top of what is there, layers upon layers of characteristics that just aren't there. So now looking at the ordinary delusions, which we can see, like attachment, what it does, it comes from this, it's multifaceted, but the simple function it has, when there's something you're attached to, let's say it's a chocolate cake, something as simple as chocolate cake. When you think about it before it's there, you get all excited, you anticipate it, you believe when you get it, you'll get happy. And then already in your mind, you're completely exaggerating its status. You're completely exaggerating what it'll do for you. You're completely exaggerating its deliciousness. And when you see it, we all know it looks divine, doesn't it? We know that. And we just assume it is divine. In fact, we assume, this is the point, that the divineness is in the chocolate cake itself. It's like you put a spoonful of divineness along with the flour and the eggs. And it's got, in a sense, it's got nothing to do with me. Oh, look at that delicious chocolate cake. What choice do I have? I have to stuff it in, That's how attachment functions. We know this. Emotional hunger is this attachment, and its function it's multifaceted in its function. It causes pain, it's neediness, expectation. It causes to possess. It causes to grasp. But its bare bones function when it's on the case is it exaggerates in this case, the deliciousness of something. Whether you're in love with somebody, when you're in love with somebody, you can't stop thinking about them every second. You crave to be near them. You crave their love and approval. You think about them, you practically faint with pleasure. You look at them, you practically faint with pleasure when you're in love with them, because attachment is going berserk. We know this. Attachment is exaggerating their deliciousness. Now talk to that person's ex-girlfriend, and they will, what do they see now? Not delicious. They see, because their anger has now arisen. Their anger, which is the response to when their attachment didn't get what he wanted because he cheated on her with you. How does he appear to her? Like ugly as sin. She'd happily kill him. We know this. We just know this, but we don't join the dots, you know. So all these neurotic states of mind cause us to go up and down like yo-yos. If you've got, like, say, low self-esteem, you're exaggerating your badness. We know that. If you've got arrogance, you're exaggerating your special qualities. They all have that particular function. So we can kind of see this. So the root delusion, the maripa, the ignorance, the clinging to this inherent me, inherent cake, inherent you, inherent everything, that exaggerates the very status itself of that very thing. And it's the hardest one to see. It's so theoretical for us, you know. So we start with the grosser ones first, at least, and get the sense of how they don't exist. As they say, that things don't exist the way they appear to us. In other words, there's a disconnect between how the cake exists in reality and how I see the cake. And that's the disattachment. But the deeper delusion is the harder one to see. So then that's why its practice is gradual. You start lessening the neuroses, the branch delusions like attachment and aversion. You steady your mind. You don't get so caught up in believing all these stories your mind tells you. And then this is preparing you to get to the subtler level, you know. So let's look at the words then, because it's so confusing to us. Empty. What does it mean? Know this, know that. So one of the biggest mistakes, and you can be forgiven for making it, is that, oh, I see, there's no I. There's no this and no that. Well, I might as well kill myself. It sounds the most nihilistic thing we've ever read. It's not even any damn thing. Everything says no, nothing, you know. So we've got to understand what it means. Just got to understand what it means. Otherwise, we get into big trouble. So, but before we even do that, let's look at this word empty or emptiness, because it's fairly evident. If you think there is no I, the I is empty, we think, of course, we're going to think there's no I. Okay, well, might as well kill myself. But Buddha is not saying that. He's saying that the fantasy I that we think exists, the real, solid, concrete, definite, independent I, that I doesn't exist. So I exist, cakes exist, this exists. There's conventional reality and then what they call ultimate reality. And we've got to get these things clear, you know. So empty simply means, the simple word, it just means absent. So if you think if you go to grab, you grab your cup of tea and and this is the point, you're expecting tea. In my thermos, I'm expecting tea, look, and I'll go, oh, my thermos is empty, I'll say. We all know that word. You look in your bank account, Noam thinks there's, they think there's, he and they, you're both. Oh, all right then. He thinks there's $5,000 is in the account, and he's believing it totally 100%. He knows he put it in there, and he looks in the bank account and he gets a shock of his life because he sees a zero. But listen to this: a zero is there, and for a billionth of a second he sees a zero. But what actually appears to his mind is the shock of no $5,000, the absence of his precious $5,000. So when I grasped at my thermos expecting the tea, and I discover there's no tea, then yes, the thermos is empty. His bank account is empty. There is nothing there. That's nihilism. But what appears to my mind when I say, oh, my cup's empty, I mean it's empty of what I thought should be there. Noam, when he goes to his bank account and what appears to his mind is the absence of his precious $5,000. So that's not the same as saying there's no $5,000. It's a very different, because the mind is always cognizing something. And so to cognize the absence of tea, So what appears to my mind is a phenomenon called the absence of tea. What appears to Noam's mind is the absence of $5,000. Well, they're disappointing absences, but the yogi, in the subtlety of his meditation, after years and lifetimes of hard work, finally one day, when the penny drops, he will see nakedly for the first time. And it's a huge shock, it seems. They say that. He will see for the first time, he'll realize for the first time that I, that inherent independent I he's been clinging to since beginningless time, doesn't exist, has never existed, and could never exist. So this is the realization, quote unquote, of emptiness of the I. And it's an utter revelation. And as Lama Zopa says, the greatest yogis experience total bliss when they realize it. In other words, you've believed, it's sort of like, yeah, you've believed, you've believed in something for countless lifetimes, or just think about you believed in something existing that's causing you suffering, and you discover it's never been there. So it's like a release, it's like a joy, you discover the thing you thought was there, but it's not there. So we've been believing in things that don't exist. This is a way to say it. It sounds abstract, but when we start to get our heads around this concept, we can really begin to understand why Buddha says we suffer. This is and it's in our mind, and it's a very tricky one, but it's very, very powerful. So the absence of something. We're just talking about ordinary absences, like absences of $5,000, absence of tea in my thermos. But the one here is they could exist. 5,000 could exist, tea could exist, but this is far more subtle, because the inherent I, the independent I that we've believed in since beginningless time, that's the root of all suffering, has never, could never, and does not exist. So it's a much more dramatic absence. This is a way of saying. So, I mean, we've got to get our head around these words. This is the whole thing. And it can be very intellectual, but it's good to be correct about it, to read about it, think about it, try to meditate on it. And one day we begin to get some sense of the meaning. It's really important. So we'll go further, but do you have any questions, what I've said so far? Let's have a discussion.
I'm wondering about the work of like watching thoughts and like watching cognition, and if that is kind of something to do to get to the place of not having, I don't know.
No, I mean, Adrian, this is really the point of being a Buddhist, and often we don't think of it this way. Sometimes we tend to be a bit cliched and think I've got to meditate and make all the thoughts go away, which can be quite kind of relieving, especially when our crazy thoughts are going berserk. We all know it's quite a relief to have a bit of calm for 5 minutes, but that's just a help. That's not really the main point. In a sense, what we've got to learn, all these misconceptions or delusions or afflictions or neurotic states of mind for the Buddha, we've brought these I mean, we've got to take this view of karma as a given here. We don't just learn these when we're a baby. We don't get them from our mother. We bring them with us, countless lifetimes. We are programmed with all these misconceptions and delusions and tendencies. We're also fortunately programmed with the virtues and the goodness as well, which is our saving grace. So a little bit of meditation every day can help us calm our mind, but what it really does give us the ability to do once we're off the cushion is develop the skill, as you just said, to hear all the crazy thoughts. But just hearing them is a good start, but the real job to be done is to learn to distinguish between the crazy, ridiculous thoughts like attachment and anger or low self-esteem and the positive thoughts. This is why these words sound so cute, but in Buddhist psychology, this is massively important. The Buddha divides all the contents of our mind into three categories: the neurotic, deluded, I-based, fear-based misconceptions, emotional afflictions. That's the first lot. They're the source of pain. The next lot are our saving grace: kindness, intelligence, love, compassion. I mean, any happiness we have in our lives is due to those, So forget the third category, but just these two. And our key job as a Buddhist, on the basis of developing concentration, a bit of meditation every day, 90% of the day we're not on our cushion. So you've got to be noticing what the hell is going on in this mind of ours. And not just noticing, oh, there's a feeling, but learning to distinguish one thought from another. And then when you hear the rubbish one, because the rubbish ones have a very strong emotional component. We know that. You're grasping at something. So you learn to hear it, and you learn to develop the ability to use your good roommates. I think of them, all my roommates, to argue with the crazy roommates and learn to work with them before they explode out your mouth and you want to kill somebody. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this is the job of being a Buddhist, is to not just observe your mind, oh, there's my mind, but to really get in touch with it and to identify what the hell is going on, because that's the cause of your pain. And then the difficult part is not to learn not to believe the story it's telling us. When we're angry about that person who really did hurt us, let's say, everything in our being is believing they're a creep. And so it's very hard to not believe the story of anger or the story of jealousy or the story of depression. There's some reality out there. The person was mean, but anger is a layer on top of that fact. So it's not easy, but this is the job. And as we get ever better and better and better at that, we can start to begin to identify the deepest one, the one that clings to the me underneath all this stuff. Do you understand? This is a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep going. Did you have something else? Or that was it? Anybody else want to say something? Or ask, or just keep chatting away, whatever you like. No?
I had a question about, you said at the end, the deeper, that sort of deeper I, to let go of that. And I know that when I think about it, like there's fear, which that probably is the thing itself.
Yes.
It's grabbing. But maybe I don't have a question. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about it.
The I one. Yeah, I know. I mean, it is fascinating because the word I is one of our favorite words. It's the main player in our heads, and we shouldn't be guilty about it. We sort of hear it like we're naughty sinners, but we're trying to identify why we suffer. That's really what Buddha's deal is. But the way when you hear the Tibetans talk, they're all a bit sort of fundamentalist how they talk. It sounds like you're the worst sinner since who knows what, But it's seeing, recognizing, and this is what's hard, because what we have a tendency to do is think it's the person that's the problem, and it's the event that's the problem, and it's the pain in the knee that's the problem. They're the external event. It's our interpretation of the person and even of the pain in the knee that's the problem. And that's the difficult part. This is the most sophisticated level of practice, because even if we're the best practitioners with a good meditation, we all know as soon as a bad thing happens, the I has a panic attack and rises up, and then it does its story. How dare you do that to me? It shouldn't have happened to me. So there's anger and attachment are the voices of the I, but the I is the player underneath, So it's really hard to get to see all of this stuff. It's so instinctive. And I mean, we should be very humble and patient with ourselves, because this is really not joking when I say this is to be able to get to the level of subtlety that Buddhism says we can is very sophisticated and takes a lot of practice. There's no question about it. But all we can do is start where we are, And so I mean, the I is there all the time, the voice of I. And as we all know, a sense of I is always in reference to other, isn't it? And the stronger the feeling of the unhappy I, the stronger the feeling of that ugly other out there, isn't it? It's always in reference to I. So we shouldn't, but the key point about the emptiness and making a mistake, is not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is the biggest mistake we can make. We can become completely nihilistic, And so either we make the mistake of thinking, well, I can't be arrogant. I've got to be more humble. So then we end up becoming like a doormat to everybody. I'm trying to give up the I, but almost like being a doormat is another version of being caught up in your own I, especially because it's attachment to being seen as a good girl and mummy's little helper. And that looks nice. But there's just as much feeling of I there as there is if you're loud and shouting, except the loud and shouting person harms others as well, So the feeling of I is really quite subtle. And it's not just a question of walking around with a sweet smile on our face, because often that just comes from attachment. As I said, trying to be seen to be a nice girl. That's just as much a function of ego, but it's much harder to identify it. So it's very tricky we need a lot of skill, a lot of practice to be able to distinguish between a neurotic feeling of I and a valid sense of I, which is I am me. And so that means, again, you can make the mistake of thinking, oh, well, there's no I, then let the person shout at me. It doesn't matter. There's no I anyway. I mean, that's ridiculous. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This is one of the biggest mistakes. And it is a lot of learning. There's a lot of hit and miss with it. But this is why it's important to hear the teachings, and with respect, to hear proper teachings. I'm not trying to be rude here, but because in the West, we think religion, anyone can make up their own ideas, and we don't think we need to be rigorous and have proper sources. You go to a weekend course, you had a nice meditation, you write a bloody book about it. I mean, this is not uncommon in the West. So we've really got to be very rigorous and very accurate in really sourcing valid teachings and valid teachers. Otherwise we can be led up a garden path. I can't stress that part enough. And that we've got to use our intelligence and to really check our sources so carefully. What do you think, people? Anything else?
Hi,
Anyone?
Robina.
Hello,
Yeah,
Helena. Talk to me, sweetheart.
okay, this is just a small question. You said much earlier, Buddhism is not a weird religion, but I couldn't get what you said after that. Something like it's the end of psychology. And I was just wondering if you could go
Oh, no,
back to that.
no, I said, no, I didn't mean like, that's not what I said. And I'm sure
I could have misheard it.
no, 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 I speak so fast in my ridiculous accent as well. So I'm sure it comes out wrong. No, 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 no. Okay, what I was really trying to say is, I think in the West we have this, we think of psychology, and it's kind of all the different systems in the West, and wonderful. There's so many good people doing good things in psychology in the West, there's no question. But then we think of Buddhism, and we know meditation, all this, and we hear, but it's sort of, we think of it as different or separate or somehow, I don't know, but actually if you analyze it, I mean, look at the word psychology. Look at the word psychotherapy. I mean, we love our Greek words, right? Psycho is the mind, and therapy means to heal. Well, Buddha's deal is the mind. And this is the biggest shock. I was talking to somebody recently, an Australian psychologist, who said, well, basically Buddhism doesn't have a model of any kind of explaining mental problems. I mean, this is exactly what Buddha's doing in his own very particular way. So we don't hear it like this. We just don't join the dots. So if you want to say it, I would say Buddha's your best therapist on the planet. I mean, he's your best psychologist. I'm not trying to be prejudiced, but I mean, it's not as if psychology is set in stone over there because it's this and this. Anyone who works with your human mind and identifies problems and good qualities, that's psychotherapy, healing the mind. Well, Buddha's your best damn mind healer. That's his whole thing. That's his entire thing, That's exactly what Buddhism is. An incredibly sophisticated, I'm not kidding now, an incredibly detailed, deeply incredibly sophisticated, vast and deep presentation of the mind to the subtlest level that we can't even imagine, and the degree to which we can access our mind and unpack and unravel it. Really, I have to say with respect, there's nothing equivalent in terms of subtlety in the modern world. And this is not being rude. I think people who are studying it now are starting to see that. And these great scientists and scholars, especially those in the last 30, 40 years having all these conferences with the Dalai Lama. Now people in the West are beginning to wake up to this incredible knowledge that's been around India for 3,000 years. But we just, oh yeah, that's India. We all wacko Indians with spots on their heads, I mean, we're so rude. So anyway, I got carried away there, Helena. So but what I'm trying to say is Buddhism is an incredible system about the mind, about the human mind, how it, or more than that, just all beings' minds, how they function, and what parts of our mind are the source of pain, and what we can do to fix it. So, I mean, if you like, you could say for sure Buddhism is psychotherapy. So anyway, whatever you thought I said before, but that's what I'm meaning to say.
Thank you. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you going into so much detail about the subtlety of Buddhism and how different that actually is from any kind of psychotherapy in the West.
Yes.
And there's kind of a brutish quality in the
I
West.
understand. And the thing about it too is it's true that actually Buddha is talking to us. He's not talking to he's talking to us individually, this is the methods I have used to put myself together, and this is the methods that you can use. And so you know yourself, if you want to go off and become a doctor to help others, you've got to learn about it yourself. If you're going to teach mathematics to others, you've got to become a mathematician yourself. If you're going to help others heal their mind, you better know how to heal your own mind. And I think that's, at least I think, is very encouraging in our modern culture. I think back 100 years ago, when you had all these white male, with respect, white male psychiatrists, they would never to think that they have a problem. They know they're clever people who can advise poor mentally sick people, you know. But at least now, when people become therapists, they do the work themselves. They get into their own mind, I mean, because Buddha would say, I really mean this sincerely, but it's like, sounds like a joke. His view of mental illness, mental afflictions, attachment, ego, grasping, and all the rest, is so much more subtle and so much, I would say, so much more sophisticated, that basically he's saying we're all mentally ill. We've all got ego grasping or attachment or anger. It's just a question of degree, you know. So the ones who are really kind of out there crazy, cutting themselves and trying to kill each other and murder, then clearly they're extremely mentally ill, and they don't ask them to sit looking at their mind. That would be the biggest joke on the planet. So you've got to be fairly together already to even look at your own mind, you know. So it's just a question of degree, that's all. But the more we do it ourselves, the more we can help others. You know? There's no question about that, you know. Hello, Jess.
Hi there. I've been studying the actual sutra, and one thing I've been thinking about is, so we talk about delusion a lot, but I want to understand then what is real. Like the 5 Ks is real, love is also real. What's real?
I understand, Jess. That's a good point. Well, first of all, let's look at this word delusion. And unfortunately, in the different Buddhist traditions, these words are all used differently. So the way I'm using the word here is another term for as you know, if you read any Buddhist book, they use the term affliction. Affliction, which is not a very old-fashioned word. We don't tend to use that in daily life, do we? But that's the term that's used in Sanskrit and in Tibetan to refer to ego grasping, attachment, anger, jealousy, and all the other dramas. Affliction is the term they use. So, of course, it's a mental affliction. It's fairly evident. Well, you know, afflictions can also be called illness. So mental illness. It sounds shocking to say it, but that's really what a Buddha would have approved of that term. Instead of mental affliction, it's mental illness. So, okay, so now I got carried away. What was your question again? I completely forgot, Jess. What did you say?
That's okay.
Oh, the word delusion. Okay, got it.
So delusion is what we're under.
Yeah.
And after we recognize delusion, what is real?
Okay, so this is, okay, good. That's exactly right. Okay, so I want to be clear about the word delusion first. It is referring to attachment, anger, jealousy, low self-esteem, pride, all these emotional dramas we're so familiar with, and especially also the root delusion, this marigpa, this ignorance, this ego grasping that clings to a solid me. They're called delusion's a great word, because you know very well if someone accuses you of being delusional, they're telling you you're not in touch with reality. And that is literally and precisely what Buddha's saying. The degree to which we're caught up in attachment and anger and jealousy and fears, one, is the degree to which we are suffering, but two is the degree to which we're living in la-la land. You know, like we're literally living in la-la land. So then that's extreme delusion. But even if we're fairly, you know, if we've got ourselves together, we're fairly stable, we've got a good practice, we're kind of being kind and patient and not so much attachment, not so much anger, there's still delusion there at the deepest level, the one about this business that emptiness then would counteract. So what exists is the way to put it is this: Buddha's saying that things exist conventionally, and then things have this ultimate nature, existing ultimately. So the shorthand for those terms, things exist conventionally, meaning like that means cups, toilets, people, good, bad, mountains, politicians, statues, the things of the world. We can establish that's called a statue. I am called a person. You know, you're a person. Your hair is black. Behind you, there are some books. We can establish that the regular things in the world do exist. Emptiness doesn't contradict that. But what Buddha's saying is, we don't realize that when we see the book and the this and the statue and the person, we add on top of it qualities that don't exist there, but we can't see we're doing it. It's a bit like you're colorblind, and you know you're colorblind. There is a cup there, it has got tea in it, that's a truth. But because you're colorblind, you think it's dark red when it's only pink. So you're adding something on top of it that isn't there because your mind's making a mistake. That's what he's saying. So when we realize these lies our mind tells us, when you realize that the cake isn't delicious in itself, your mind and your excitement and your craving for it is causing the cake to look delicious. So there still is a cake there, but then that's where it gets more subtle. And sometimes, as Lama Zopa says, when we realize the emptiness of the cake or the emptiness of I or the emptiness of whatever it is, it's as if there's nothing there ultimately. But conventionally, there is a person, there is a cake, there is this, there is that. But the way he puts it is, this is when we've realized emptiness, but what does exist is so subtle, it's as if it doesn't exist. And it's a kind of a sweet way to put it. So emptiness of inherent existence of this and that doesn't deny the existence of this and that. So it's getting this balance between understanding that conventional things do exist, but not in the way we think. So getting they refer to these as the two truths: conventional truth, ultimate truth. And it's really good to understand these ones. And one could, I mean, we could think about these. We can discuss this for 2 years. We'll just touch the surface,
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that a good start?
I think so. Thank you.
So we have to establish what exists and what doesn't. And we can see we believe in things that don't exist, meaning that cake that'll make you divinely happy, that boyfriend who's going to completely save your life and make you happy until you're 97. They're clearly exaggerations. So they're the things that don't exist, not as if there's no boyfriend. Okay, when we're really delusional, that's when we have conspiracy theories. That's when we're seriously ill. When you really believe there's someone running the show and everybody's kind of all these conspiracy theories that people go on about now, that's extreme. You understand what I'm trying to say? So there's levels of delusion, levels of what doesn't exist. And a person who really does believe they're Mozart, well, clearly they're seriously mentally ill. But even if you just believe you're better than you are and you've got arrogance, that's also not true. These delusions exaggerate things. Do you understand me, Jess?
Yes, I do understand. I know there's some raised hands. I do have a follow-up, but we can go to the other.
Oh, go. No, please go. Say, what is it?
Okay. How does one think of the general subject of spirituality? Like, is that a conventional truth in the way that Buddhism would think about it? Like,
well, I mean, okay,
has good things in store for you. Love is the way, things like that.
What do you, first of all, you better tell me because it's a very broad term, isn't it? How do you use it? What do you think it means? How do you use it?
Maybe common things like, for example, the concept of tarot cards, and that there are, okay, let's talk about the lunar cycle. Like, their moon is a certain shape today, therefore you are likely to be a certain way.
I see what you're saying. No, I understand your point. Okay, let's look at that then. Okay, let's look at that. Well, it's interesting, in the Tibetan Buddhist monastic university system, which comes straight from the great monastic university system in India, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th century, these incredible great places where they studied. And in the Tibetan Buddhist monastic university system, it's still the same. They study what they call the 5 sciences. And this is how it was back certainly in the Greek and earlier European studies, and including one of the 5 sciences one's called philosophy, epistemology, psychology, philosophy, and then the 5th one is called astrology. And so it is a very sophisticated science, and it's all I would say it's based upon the understanding that everything is dependent arising, that we're affected by everything around us. So we know very well if you walk outside and the wind is blowing, it's going to affect you. Well, all they're saying is when the moon is a certain place, it's going to affect you. I mean, if it already makes the tides in the water move along, I mean, come on, everything has an effect. This is what it means. Everything has an effect. And I think as you get more subtle, as you become more advanced spiritually, meaning you've accessed a more subtle level of your own mind, that's using the Buddhist view, you become incredibly sensitive to all the effects around us at a subtle level. So I think it's not as if, so I think you can be stupid with it and not be very intelligent, but I think people who've got skills and knowledge, it's just another way of interpreting how the effects of the things in the world. I totally give credibility to it. the idea. You understand me?
Yes, lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. But again, get good people. Anybody can make up anything they like. Get good people,
It's an art to figure out what's real.
Well, that's exactly, we've got to figure out what's real. Honestly, I swear to you, that's what being a Buddhist means, learning to know what's real and what's not, I swear to you. That's sanity and happiness. That's the bonus. So go on, Noam, yes.
Well, I have a question. I have two questions, but I'll start with one and maybe see if there's time for another. I'm really fascinated with the ways that people translate samnya. And
Which word? What's the word you're saying?
Samnya, the fourth skandha.
I don't know. I don't speak Sanskrit, so you have
Okay, I don't know what you would call it, but it's the one that sometimes gets called volition.
Oh, okay. Let me describe to you. I understand very well. Let's go through the 5 aggregates then. So the 5 aggregates, the 5 skandhas. This is coming from a teaching of the Buddha that he presented the impermanent world on the one hand, but also a person on the other hand, and broke us into 5 little components, 5 little heaps of things. So the first is form, which refers to the physical. Then you see these next 2 are really important to understand. When you study the texts on the mind, you've got consciousness in general. Mind or consciousness are synonymous, and that's the 5th one. Consciousness in general, which is not physical, and in general it's the capacity to cognize. But then you've got the bits and pieces of your mind, which we would probably call states of mind. They call them mental factors, states of mind, and they have this text in which they present about 51 of them that are kind of crucial ones, and there's different groupings of them. So there's one group that are called the always present mental factors. Intention, volition, attention, feeling, I forget, never mind. Discrimination. So intention is almost as if intention is one of the most important, because it's the very thought, I will. It's volition. It's the most powerful. So that's going to be in the 4th category in a minute. But the 2nd and the 3rd ones are 2 of these mental factors that play a massive role in our suffering and indeed in our capacity to get over suffering. And they're called feeling and discrimination. So feeling isn't what we think it means, like an emotion. It's a very specific state of mind that enables you to function. Oh, no, sorry, you have happy feelings, unhappy feelings, or neutral feelings. There's only 3 kinds. And there's very specific teachings about this. So we all crave the happy ones. We don't want the unhappy ones. But they're these different states of mind, and they're not virtuous and they're not non-virtuous. So feeling is a huge one. And because we all crave happy feelings, so whatever gives us a happy feeling, we think there must be a nice thing. So, the cake gives you a happy feeling, so you keep craving the cake, whatever. So we get into big trouble because we believe in we're craving the happy feeling, and we follow attachment to get the happy feeling, and that's a disaster. Now, the other one, the 3rd of these 5, is called discrimination, which is another one of these. It's there every millisecond. And that's this ability in our mind every millisecond to discriminate between this and that. So red, pink, blue, up, down, round, sharp. I mean, even as we look around the room, 1,000 different things we're able to discriminate. There's a curtain, there's this, there's that. And this is a majorly important state of mind that, again, gets us into big trouble if we make mistakes using it to get what attachment wants. But it's also crucial to use it in a virtuous way to distinguish between the negative and the positive in our mind. So they're given special status out of that grouping of 51. Form, feeling, and discrimination. Now, the 4th one is called various terms, compounded, it's basically a little grab bag of leftover of those 49 of the 51 mental factors and other bits and pieces that make up a person that are neither the mind nor the matter. They're different impermanent bits and pieces in this little grab bag. But the Tibetans always call this one volition or intention because of the incredible, that's in that grab bag, but because of its incredible power, because it really is the meaning of karma, mental action, intention. That's why they refer to it as volition. But technically, volition is just one of the many bits and pieces in that grab bag, which they call compounded phenomena or something, you know, or non-associated compounded phenomena, something like that.
So that's why it has so many different translations, is because it actually isn't one thing. It's
It's
grab
got
bag.
hundreds of things in it. It's a little grab bag of leftover bits and pieces. But the Tibetans always refer to it as volition because of the power of volition or intention. Because if you want to talk about the word karma, the mental action is the first thing. Your hand won't do a thing until
Right.
your mind drives it, and intention drives
Right.
everything. Intention, not motivation, but
Right.
bare bones volition. I will. So they give it the name, that grouping, but it's not technically correct, but that's how they call it. And
Yeah.
also in the death process,
Yeah.
each of these aggregates cease functioning at each of the first stages of death. And the fourth stage of death is when intention ceases. So it's a kind of a major role. When you've lost the plot completely, you know, you can no longer put two and two together.
Yeah.
You understand?
I had heard it, I had sort of thought of it as volition for a long time, and then I heard it called impulse, and I really liked that. And then
Yeah.
recently I heard it called choice, and I thought that
Yeah,
was,
you can even say that if you like. I mean, but
yeah,
its intention means I will. And actually, that's there every millisecond, and it
right,
drives all the others. If you don't
right,
even say, I want an ice cream, I
right,
promise nothing will, you won't go towards an ice cream. There's got to be intention there, and we've got to
right,
be aware of it. And
right,
and then and not, it's not good or bad. You know, it's a question, then you put your motivation underneath that, and it changes it into positive or negative. But it's
right.
every millisecond intention or volition, or those words are there, yeah. But they give it the name for the whole grouping, but it's just one of the group.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. Well, I guess I'll ask my other question, or it
Go
may,
ahead.
well, so I've been working a lot with uh, this is sort of an coming out of trying to understand the Heart Sutra and what it's saying, and that is working with the skandhas as letting myself just be the skandhas, not trying to layer something on top of them. And you know, in the sutras, they're usually referred to as the skandhas or the aggregates subject to clinging. And so trying to remove the clinging from my experience of the skandhas, I found that to be it feels liberating. It feels like it's a liberating experience. So I would just love to hear what you have to say about
Well,
that.
I mean, yeah, okay. So one of the other ways of putting it really, though, is that everything dependent arising is the way things exist conventionally, and emptiness is the way things exist ultimately. So one of the ways, this is what's indicated here, that things exist conventionally is in dependence upon their bits and pieces. So one of the ways to break down the grasping at that divine person or divine cake, which looks like this delicious thing set in stone out there, you look into it and you break it down into component parts. And you
Yeah.
go, well, and then you break it, there's the flour and there's the eggs and there's the chocolate cake. You break it all down and say, well, where's the bloody delicious cake? It's just a fantasy, you know? And so the same with the skandhas. We're made up of these 5 bits and pieces that are grasping at I all the time. What
Yeah.
is the I? Where is it? Well, there's the form, there's the feeling, there's this, there's the other 49 in that little grab bag. They're all the bits and pieces. That lessens the grasping of the attachment at the I. That's the point. It's dependent
Good.
arising.
Thank you. Yes, I do. That makes perfect
Good. Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Go on. What else? What's that
Just,
schedule?
I see Adrian's hand, but also Gisela
Yeah.
had their hand up before, so I just wanted to give them
Who
the
was?
option
Which
to
one? Who?
ask.
Where?
Gisela and Wes.
Okay. Good. Go on then. Talk to me. But are they there? Oh, here we go. There you go. Talk to me, dear ones.
Oh, sorry about that. No, but Robina, you did answer my question. Thank you very much with the answer. It was answered.
Oh, good. This is wonderful. I'm very happy. What else, people? Adrian, you talk to me, sweetheart. And Nick, then is Nick as well. So you go Adrian first, then Nick after that. Go on. And
I was
darling.
wondering,
Yeah.
okay. I was wondering, there's been times when I've done periods of intensive practice and then having a lot of the sort of delusion come in like a big wave that's really
Yeah.
difficult. And I'm wondering if that's more just a comparative thing of having so much awareness and then becoming aware of how bad
No, I
problems
understand
are,
you.
or if it's actually or if it is actually kind of a pushing back of the mind.
No, I understand. Very good point. It's a very good point. Well, it's very interesting. First of all, one point is I'm in one, I'm in one of the books we study, the Lama, and he goes through they describe this technique, single pointed concentration, or what the world vaguely knows as mindfulness, but describing this complete technique of getting samadhi in terms of 9 stages of learning to develop concentration. And he says a sign of success at the first of these 9 stages is you think your mind's getting more berserk. So I think when even, you just go do some therapy, you can't believe how much garbage is there, but it's always been there. We just haven't paid attention before. So that's certainly one point. But I'd say the other point, and this is very much the way the Tibetan teachings say it, it's sort of like when you're going off and do some strong spiritual work, it's like you're going on a fast. Well, you're going to start stinking. Your breath will be ugly. You'll be farting. All the dirt is coming out. So that's what I remember. Lama Zopa often says that. I remember a friend of mine for years doing intensive, serious, long-term, 4-year, 3-year tantric retreats. And at some point he was out of his brain with extra levels of rage and despair and arrogance. He thought he was going crazy. And he went to Lama Zopa, so distressed. And Rinpoche laughed and laughed and laughed and said, fantastic, the dirt has to come out. The dirt has to come out. So we've got to have the courage to see that and not identify with it, but to try to be glad that we're seeing the shit and glad that it's all coming up, because you're activating it. It's like you're in the washing machine. The dirt has to come out. The water looks disgusting once you put your shirt in there. So we've got to have that view. But what we tend to do is we panic and think I'm a bad person. But it's a very good sign. So be happy. The dirt's coming out. Better out than in, baby.
Thank you.
You understand? Yes, Nick.
Thanks for that. Thanks for being here, Robina. And thanks for the centre for putting on. I'm joining from Melbourne, so I appreciate it being online. But my question, I've got 2. They're kind of interrelated. I'm just wondering if you can break it down a little bit more, just to kind of practice with this, to kind of get better at it. Because I think you said that earlier, you just need to kind of keep chipping away at it. So if you can give us some steps to do that, but also dealing with the fear, that sense of, I'm guessing this is the sense of I that comes up, the fear, that start to kind of lean into the practice a little bit more. Is that the thing that you then need to work with, that sense of fear?
I think I missed that last point you said. Will you say it again, please? I want to be understanding.
So sometimes, yeah, so asking for a bit of a breakdown of how to practice with this, to kind of experiment with it more. But then sometimes if fear comes up in practice, just how to work with that and not get kind of, thrown off.
I understand. No, I hear. Okay, so fear, well, this is really fascinating, I think. If we look at this Buddhist model of the mind, you've got the neurotic states of mind, deluded, neurotic afflictions, which as far as the West is concerned are normal parts of a normal person. We all know that, but Buddha says they're mental illnesses and you can get rid of them. So it's kind of more extreme. So then you've got the positive states of mind. And then you've got this third category, which are the ones we mentioned before, that are neither negative nor positive. I call them the mechanical parts of our mind: intention, discrimination, good memory. All of these, they enable you to do something good. Whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need those. But forget that lot. But the first lot are the neurotic, deluded ones, and the second lot are the virtues. Now, the trouble is, like in your garden, all the herbs don't politely grow down one end and the weeds down the other. They all mung together, and you can't tell a weed from a herb because unless you know botany, you can't see the difference. It's incredible. So we have to learn to identify what a weed is and what a herb is. And the key function, this is what I'm getting at now, the key function, and this is a big surprise to us, of the neurotic ones, it's obvious, but we don't join the dots, is fear. I mean, we're all living at low-level states of anxiety all the time. And why is this the point? Forget the ego grasping, which is rooted in the most primordial fear. And that most of the time is like a sleeping lion. It's only when you're attacked or you nearly have a car crash or someone does a terrible thing to you that the deepest feeling of I rises like this sleeping lion and a full-blown panic attack, you know. But the other levels of it, normally every day we've got attachment, and attachment's just there all the time, and it's like a low-level anxiety. It's always craving to get the nice things, and it just can't stand anything but the nice things. So the millisecond attachment is slightly thwarted, and the tea doesn't taste nice. The husband says a mean word. The traffic light is red. I'm talking about baby events. That's moments of anxiety, and anxiety is another word for fear. So the delusions are rooted in fear. That's their character. It's their nature, you know. So our virtues are not rooted in fear. They're solid and clear, but they come all together and we can't tell the difference. So when we're working hard on our mind and we're really trying to do the good job, and some drama happens in your daily life, not on your cushion, even something, I always use the stupidest example. You come off your meditation cushion in the morning, you go down to breakfast, or let's say you live with a husband, and there he is slurping his coffee again. I mean, excuse me, what's going to arise? Attachment in you only wants nice sounds. It's so subtle we don't notice. And the moment the ugly sound comes, the slurping, and people in the world all say those types of sounds are what made people murder each other. The personal sounds like snoring and farting and mouth sounds, you know. So you've got this aversion to this slurping. The millisecond you hear it, what do you think is going to happen? It's like a panic attack. So the real job, if we are aware of our mind second by second, which is very hard, when the thing happens that isn't what your attachment wants, the mean person, the slurping of the coffee, you stub your toe, I'm talking baby events. We never pay attention to them. Grab hold of it. Observe the attachment getting upset. Observe the attachment hungry for the nice thing. And then the aversion that arises is the upsetness, the anxiety, the panic, the worry. And then argue with it. But you've got to catch it real small. Don't wait till you want to kill your husband before you do something about it. Grab it right there. Okay, Robina, here we go again. There's your attachment, hungry only for lovely sounds, and suddenly got the slurping again. It's only your anger, Robina. Let him have his coffee. It's all right. And you argue with yourself. You calm it down. I mean, it sounds easy, but this is the real skill we have to learn. Then you'll keep yourself steady, and there won't be anything in your life that you won't be able to handle. I mean, that's what panic attacks are. We can't handle. That's what trauma is. Trauma is undealt with stuff since we're born. You know, we're not qualified. We're not equipped to deal with things as little children. So we bury everything away and nothing goes astray. Everything stays in the mind. And then all these triggers come and we just can't cope, you know. So learning to deal with all the baby events when they come. And this is the trouble in the West, I think. We don't go to the therapist until you want to kill your husband. If you go to your therapist and say, oh, I got annoyed this morning when he slurped his coffee, she will laugh at you and say, don't waste my time and go home, please. That's our trouble. We don't notice the little baby problems, but if we deal with them, the momentary moments of panic, tiny ones, then we'll be prepared for the big ones. Are we communicating here? It demands intense and constant awareness of what the hell is going on in our mind. And it's exhausting in the beginning because we're addicted to the outside world. But once you get this skill, this is the real skill of being a Buddhist. I promise you.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Then dealing with it. Yes, please.
Because sometimes I think I'm dealing with it, but I realize I'm suppressing it. And then it does come out more. So how do I know when I'm not actually dealing with it?
Well,
And
it's not easy, darling. We just have to get better. It's like you just begin to play tennis and you've got nobody telling you here, and you play a ball and you think you did a good job because you haven't got enough skill yet. You have to keep learning, have humility. Yeah. Don't get carried away. It's an ever more refined job because the delusions go to ever more refined levels. So we can only deal at our best level, you know, and do one and just know it's where work's in progress. And we know that the more you practice something, the better you get. So we have to know that, not get sort of stuck, you know. And of course, we're going to fool ourselves. That's what delusions do, you know, but it's okay. One step at a time. It's okay. Jessica, yes. Hi. Talk to me.
Hi, Venerable. Thank you. I'm still thinking about the the five always present factors, the mechanics, or
Yeah, right. Go.
and specifically intentions. And I'm trying to understand the definition of
Oh,
intention.
intention just means I will. May I will. So, you know, you're sitting there and then you suddenly, you know, you think, oh, cake, I will get a cake. So that's the start of the process. If you never have the thought, I will get a cake, okay, people might bring you a cake, but if there's nothing will follow after that, first is intention, then you home in attention, then you have to use discrimination to go to the cupboard to distinguish between carrot cake and chocolate cake, and you have concentration, you have mindfulness, all these bits and pieces of your mind, not just those five, all working together to get the job of the intention. Now, if you forget halfway to the cupboard what you were doing, oh, what was I doing? I don't. So, of course, because you forgot. So attention has to come again. Intention is there every millisecond, and it's what drives everything. It's the beginning of it's the beginning of the creation of karma, in other words. It's powerful. It's not meaning motivation. Often we use it as an equivalent for motivation, but motivation is what you might intend to kill your father. And then what's your motivation? Well, anger or attachment. That's a totally negative action. But you might intend to rush over and grab your husband from falling under a car. It looks like you're punching him, but your intention is to grab your husband, and then compassion is your motivation. So you might have a knife. I intend to use it, but it depends on your motivation. So intention is neither good nor bad, but it's driven by a motivation. So that's why I intend to eat my food. Well, why? Because I'm attached, you know. So you change your motivation. Intention is I will. As Lama Zopa says, everything exists on the tip of the wish, the thought, I will. It's in a technical sense, not a moralistic sense. Do you get my point? Without intention, nothing happens. You sit there frozen without intention, you know. And it's the meaning of the beginning of karma. Go on. What?
I think the places where I get confused, or not confused, but I have a deeper inquiry, is that work, there's a common, excuse me, a common phrase to assume another person's good intentions.
Okay, this is where we're talking about motivations, and this is the trouble with that word. We use it. When you use it that way, that's not the intention meant here. That's completely different. That's motivation.
And even in that situation, I think, if I don't know my own intentions, my own motivations most of the time.
Okay, so with you again, I have to make this distinction, and okay. The way I'm using this always present mental factor is not in the one of what your motivation is. This is so confusing to use that word that way. Intention is bare bones, I will. And what makes it virtuous or not virtuous is your motivation that propels you to do it. So intention comes first. I will eat cake. That's a bare bones fact. And then what drives it, the motivation will be attachment, or I will shout. I mean, you know, you might shout to help a person, but typically it's because you're driven by anger. So the way I'm using the word intention here as an always present mental factor is not the one of good intention. That's the word motivation, the reason behind it. Intention is every millisecond, it's just there, bare bones. Bare bones. I will have an ice cream. I will do this. I will get up. I will scratch myself. I will turn over. I will go to bed. I will get up. Every millisecond, there's always an intention. We're not aware much of the time because we're just programmed, you know. Then on the basis of that, there's a motivation. But I mean, the word can be used synonymously, but there's a trouble with it. It's a different state of mind. Good intention, bad intention. You understand me? That's motivation.
I do understand you. You were starting to say something about karma, and is that the seeds of intention?
Yeah, okay. Karma is referring to the process of everything we think and do and say, basically programming us. That's really what Buddha says is the law that runs the universe. It's every millisecond of every mind is doing something. Every dog, every ant, every rat, every human. And then on the basis of that, our body and our speech, or in humans' sake, speech, you know, follow through and do it. So that's the process of programming us and turning us into the person we become in the future, and causing our experiences. This is really, as His Holiness says, karma is like self-creation. It's just the process. It happens every millisecond. It's a natural law. No one runs it. It's not punishment. It's not reward. And the first step in the beginning of the creating of karma is intention. I will. As Lama Zopa says, everything exists on the tip of the wish, thought, I will. And this is the one that's just bare bones, I will. That's the beginning. So it's mental. So action, often they say action is the meaning of karma. Well, mental action is the first step. Your hand will not pick up a cup if your thought doesn't say so. Your foot will not put in front of the other foot if your mind doesn't say so. We don't realize it because it's all instinctive, because we're programmed, you understand? But the mind is working every millisecond at a level of intention. That's why we do or say anything. Do you hear what I'm saying? And so the first thought, I will, is the beginning of the process, and then everything else follows from there. Do you understand me? So it's like the real meaning of karma then is mental action, which is intention. Do you understand me? A little bit. All right, darling.
I'll keep trying. Thank you.
Good, sweetheart. Good, Jessica. Yeah. Okay, people gone. Time to finish soon. Yeah, Adrian. Yeah.
Let me see if I can hold on to it. With I was struggling to keep it.
Say something rough. Go on.
It's so I always had a perception of myself as kind of I think it's sometimes called a bad horse, of somebody who could see my problems, but I had a really hard time intervening as many times as I could see them to stop that. And I was just wondering what that if it is truly just a very hard step to look and see what like a way out of suffering is, but then not be able to take it.
No, sweetheart, there's no question. I mean, when we understand, let's say we've even got some semblance of concentration by using the samadhi technique, even that, and that's without even being some holy being yet, but some level of subtle concentration, already the subtlety of your mind is inconceivable. We can't even conceptualize the subtlety of that state of mind. It just simply doesn't exist in neuroscience or modern psychology. We can only just imagine it. It's not even getting complete concentration. It's inconceivable to imagine the subtlety of our mind and the ability to see every millisecond. And then when you think we've got 1,000 thoughts a second, and we're driven by lots of, we haven't got much concentration, it's impossible to see every thought. It's impossible. So all we can do is this level. So it's already start simple, learning about attachment and aversion, the simple delusions, but then the level of subtlety of even those is inconceivable to us. So it's a really, Buddha's just incredibly sophisticated, is the only way I can say it, in terms of the levels to which we can accomplish. So it's just one step at a time. All we can do is see what we can see, All we can do is see what we can see and keep knowing there's plenty to do and being happy to do it and keep learning, keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. We're a work in progress, Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand. I had one other question about karma. Is that okay?
Yeah, go on.
So is then it kind of a misconception about karma that it is from things that have come before? Like like if it starts with an intention and an I, is that sort of like a delusion that it has to happen because of a pattern that has happened in the past?
Well, I mean, it's cause and it's cause and effect. So it's cause and effect. That every millisecond what we think is coming. I mean, if a thought of anger arises, the main cause of it is the tendency in the mind from having been angry before. There could not be a possibility to be angry whereas in if the anger is not already in the mind. It has to be that. So why were you angry? So what's the main cause of me being angry? Oh, I was angry before. Well, what caused that? Angry before. Well, what caused that? You keep going like a broken record. You never find the first moment of anger. It goes back and back and back. It can only be that. It's not cosmic. It just can only be that. And every millisecond of kindness and love and compassion and virtue, all those. So it's a question of learning. It's like this seed comes from a fruit and that comes from a seed and this comes, where's the first one? Where's the first chicken? Sort of like that a bit. So of course it implies the past. How can there be, it has to be the past, you know? I mean, even in the West, we don't like the view of karma, but we all know we track back to mummy and daddy and the ground and back to the monkeys, you know? That's our view of cause and effect. So we all know that something that exists now comes from it's got a past. Everything has to have. It's not possible to be any other way. But the Buddha's distinctive point is the mind is its own continuity of mental moments. And it came into this life at the first conception when it joined your mummy's egg and sperm. Programmed with all the tendencies that you can see in your mind now, not to mention others. There can be no other way for it. It's just, and they came from before and before and before. It's just nothing cosmic about it. Just that we don't mind that when it comes to mummies and daddies and grandmas and grandpas, but we don't like the idea that our mind has its own past. That's for us that's just weird to us because we think it sounds like we're the blame. You know, we don't want to know about it. Do you understand?
Yeah, thank you.
So cause and effect it's really just a natural law that runs the universe it's the law within which the universe runs, put it this way. And then of course learning about how everything our mind does then also has an impact upon the physical and even an impact externally on even the type of future experiences we have. You just have to learn about it. It's very subtle. But there are 4 ways that our present actions of mind, body, and speech. There are 4 ways in which our actions, mind, body, and speech sow seeds and therefore will ripen. The first is a type of rebirth. The second is the tendencies in the mind of that person, dog or human or monkey. The third is your experiences in relation to others. And fourth is the very physical world we all occupy. We are the creators of these 4, and that's our entire life. I mean, there's, it's highly subtle how it all works, but they're the theories. And so to apply this, and many Buddhists don't particularly like karma and never think about it and think it's not relevant to it. But the more you look at Buddha's views, the whole of Buddhism is a heap of nonsense if you don't bring karma into it. Everything in Buddhist teachings is completely dependent upon this view of the universe being billions of sentient beings, mind possessors. That's the term in Tibetan for a person, for sentient being, mind possessors. There are trillions of mind possessors, all with physical energy. And everything we think and do and say impacts upon everything we experience. We are the main creators of our realities. This is what Buddha's basically saying. But it's hard for us to hear this because it's not what we think at all. The Christian view is completely different, and the materialist view is completely different. I mean, Buddhism is quite unique, So we've got to really unpack it and think it through. Are we communicating, people? Time to go home, I think, almost. 20 past 10 for me at night here in New York City. I think that we should stop. Is that okay? Tom, talk to me, Tom.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm trying to translate what you're saying into my much more limited understanding, which is informed by psychology. And what one of the things I'm wondering about, Freud and so on talked about this thing called the unconscious, which is all of this stuff that we don't know, and that from that his method of sort of healing was to make things that are unconscious conscious. It's sort of
yes,
like,
exactly.
I'm doing this thing, and then you talk to a therapist, and then you understand that, oh, I'm doing this because of that.
That's right.
And I'm wondering if that's analogous to the thing that you're talking about discernment. And I'm also, the problem sometimes comes about that when something becomes conscious, it becomes sort of like, it becomes an ego sort of state about like, I know this, therefore.
I understand. I understand. No, there's no question that I would say that as we keep practicing as a Buddhist, and certainly if you get some concentration, serious concentration, that literally you are uncovering your own unconscious, eventually when you get single point of concentration, that alone, you're going to have crystal clear memory, Tom, of countless past lives, which at the moment are totally unconscious for us. But there's all there because everything, the Buddhist view about the mind is everything we've ever thought and said and done. All of it stays in our memory, but 99.999% of our daily life, because we're living at a very gross level of conceptuality. But once you go to a more subtle level, that level of cognition can cognize more subtle levels, which is the past and the future. And clairvoyance is the most normal consequence of getting concentration. So there's no question. I mean, leave, with respect to Freud, it'll leave him for dead in terms of, or Jung in terms of what level of unconscious, countless past lives of memories, all there, but unable to be accessed because we only have the grosser level of conceptuality and the sensory consciousness, which are the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg of our capacity for cognition. Do you understand?
Thank you.
So, but the other one, of course, is the biggest point. No, all of it. You get crystal clear memory. There's no question. It's just, and that's really, as the Buddha would often say, we can't begin to really help others until we have clairvoyance, which is this incredible power. Once we've accessed a more subtle level of mind, it can see the past and future. Of course, that sounds cosmic for us, but this is exactly fitting with the Buddha's view of what the mind is and what it's capable of. And in that sense, that you sort yourself out in the most miraculous way when you can, but you don't, there's no question about it. There's no question. That happens.
Thank you.
You understand?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, people, I think time to go home. Except Gisela and Bez have a word. What's the story?
Thank you, Venerable Robina. Just with karma, my question is when you identify that source of attachment or the root piece of it, and you've seen the multiple ways in which the pattern has exhibited over the course of this life, not having seen into past lives or anything, but as you continue in that single point concentration, do you continuously start to uncover the greater subtleties of that delusion?
Well, of course,
of
course it is. Of course, sweetheart, that's exactly the point. As you keep learning, forget even concentration. Even without concentration, if you're seriously practicing every day, you start learning about attachment. And that's why they teach it like this. You start at least to control attachment to the sense objects, which is the most evident level of attachment. But as you keep getting deeper and deeper in your mind, you start to see attachment to comfort, attachment to getting what you want, attachment to people's opinions, attachment to praise, attachment at a much more subtle level that is very hard to see because we're so, but you start where we are and we keep getting ever more subtle, ever more subtle. And I think attachment too is finally will only go when we realize emptiness. I mean, it's incredibly subtle. And they even say the deepest attachment is to what people think of us. The very sense of being a separate self is completely fed by this constant craving to be seen and heard every millisecond by other people. Even we define ourselves in terms of how we're seen by others. This is really evident level of attachment. And that's not hard, that's hard to see in the beginning. Do you understand me?
Yes, Venerable Robina, thank you very much.
They say the yogis in the mountains who've really given up attachment and sex and drugs and rock and roll, really are great practitioners. They're still thinking about what the people down in the village are thinking about them. That's the depth of attachment to what people think of us. It's just automatic. Since we're born, we've got that, It's very subtle, incredibly subtle. Attachment is incredibly subtle. So one step at a time, people. Be happy to see what you can and rejoice. And then be eager to go to the next level of having your hands in your own shit. It's a delicious job, okay? Changchub Semchog Rinpoche. Ma ke panam ke guchi ke panam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du pa ba sho ge wa di nyudu dag lama sange drub gyo ne droa chikyang malupa de sala gurpa shog. Keep moving, people. Never give up, never give up, never give up. Thank you, darlings. Hello, Marianne. Happy to see you, sweetheart. Goodbye, everybody. Mary, everyone, Tom, thank you for your questions, everyone. Much love. See you next time, okay?
Thank you so much, Robina.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Much appreciated.
Good night.